Blink and you almost miss Formula One sprint qualifying. It's pretty dramatic. 2 sessions on medium tyres, Q1, Q2, just enough time in both to run 2 sets of tyres. And then Q3 on soft tyres and only time for 1 run. Completely different game, of course, when they go onto soft tyres. The characteristics change. It's not only just higher grip level, it's how you heat up the tyres on the outlap and all the other things that come into play. And that's what we saw today. McLaren, brilliant in Q1 and Q2. 1-2 at Q1, and Lando Norris, unbelievably quick in Q2 on medium tyres, but then fell away. Both of them fell away in Q3. Actually, Oscar Piastri was the quicker of the 2 McLaren drivers. Lando having a big moment with a lack of grip on the soft tyres, recovering reasonably well. But the sad and frustrating fact for Lando Norris is that the 27.597 lap that he did in Q2 on medium tyres would have put him on the pole had he been able to reproduce that on the soft tyres in Q3. As it was, all he did was a 28.4 with a big moment, qualified 9th. For his part, Max Verstappen only 4th quickest in both Q1 and Q2, which gives you an insight into the way Red Bull just look ahead at what really matters and the planning that goes into the way they operate the car. And in Q2, indeed, Max only did 1 run. He just stayed in the garage while the others were out doing the first of their 2 runs and just put in 1 run just to save a set of medium tyres, put in a quick enough lap to go P4. And then it was the sprint, the real blast in Q3 on soft tyres, everybody out together, and Max put in a perfect, sublime lap, as he always does. Really, really good to watch, and takes the pole. It was close, though. Charles Leclerc recovered beautifully from that ridiculous spin he had in untimed practice this morning. A lot of credit to Carlos Sainz for the amount of work he did and the setup work they had on that car and how good it was. But no surprise at the beginning of Q1, when normally you see cars like the Williams and the Haas and so forth out there, it was Charles Leclerc who was the first of the 20 cars out for Q1 because he hadn't done any laps. He'd done 1 flying lap in that untimed session. And he almost lost it on his first flying lap. I couldn't believe it. It was where he went off in 2023. And he goes into turn 7 and the car was very light. He just got up on the curb and kept it and had to come right off the power. He then did a couple of slow laps, and to his credit, he then put his head down, got comfortably into Q2, did the job in Q2, actually went quicker than Carlos. And then in Q3, under pressure, on the red soft tyre from Pirelli, just behind Max Verstappen. Top speed of the Ferrari 336 on that lap. Max Verstappen on his lap 337. So very close. They line up on the front row of the grid. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, business as normal, you could say. And very, very little between them, it would seem, in terms of top speed. That may change when they modify the cars after the sprint race tomorrow before qualifying for the Grand Prix. But going in, looks pretty close. Although, of course, you've got to say Red Bull do have that very large sweet spot in which they can operate in terms of the amount of downforce they can run. They run just enough just to stay competitive on the straight, a little bit quicker than everybody else on the straight, annoyingly so. But because they're leading the race most of the time with Max, and he doesn't have the benefit of DRS, they have to take that as the gold standard of where they're going to be in speed and in terms of how much downforce they can run. And then Max just gets the best of the car with that downforce level. Really, really impressive to watch. Of course, Ferrari will have DRS if they fall into P2 with Charles Leclerc. And then it'll be an interesting race because they're 2 really long straights in Miami. So yeah, sprint race. We'll see how it goes. Tire management will probably come into it. It was more about getting the tire temperatures right at the beginning of Q3 on the outlaps. And it was amazing to see McLaren and how well they did with that tire temperature build-up in Q1 and 2 on the medium tyre, but how they fell away in Q3 when it came to the soft tyre. Lando for sure had problems with that, and Oscar Piastri out-qualified Lando in Q3, and also, interestingly, Lance Stroll out-qualified Fernando Alonso in Q3 as well. So both Aston Martin Mercedes and both McLaren Mercedes into Q3. McLaren not brilliant, but Aston Martin doing a solid job. Lance Stroll looking pretty good, but neither factory Mercedes made it through into Q3. Lewis Hamilton even hitting the wall. Not enough to damage the car, but enough to unsettle him and the car and the team, of course. So another very, very difficult day for Mercedes because they look quite good in the untimed session this morning. They got upgrades on the car. George Russell was always there. Lewis Hamilton was very close to him on full tanks. Well, on a fuel load, they look pretty good. Looking back now, they probably weren't running the same heavy fuel level that Red Bull were running. But the top speed even then was not good with heavy fuel in the car. So yeah, a difficult weekend ahead of Mercedes. I suppose the only saving grace you can say is that there is an opportunity to change the setup again before Grand Prix qualifying, but then that does apply to everyone as well. A rather disappointing end to Q3 for Carlos Sainz, but the other big talking point, the other great result, I think, was Daniel Ricciardo qualifying P4 for Visa Cash App. This is the first time we've really seen Daniel looking like Daniel Ricciardo. He looked really good. He even touched the wall, but he touched the wall really nicely in Q2. Just brushed it front end, rear wheels, just brushed it broadside, kept going, no real problem at all. And right there on the soft tyre in Q3. So congratulations to Daniel. There have been some difficult moments, but it started to turn around, it looked like, in China when Yuki Tsunoda had a very difficult weekend. Speaking of Yuki, he was very good this morning, and it looked like he was back where he'd been since the start of the year. But then in Q2, possibly as a function of that bad weekend in China and really wanting to make up for it and have a great result here in Miami, he was just over driving and the back end got away from him and he lost a good 2 to 3 tenths trying to correct that in the slow part of the circuit. So yeah, you could say a classic Yuki mistake. He's been looking very good overall in terms of bringing a car home in the points in races. I guess qualifying is still a bit of an issue for him, certainly right now with Daniel Ricciardo doing the job he is. Let's hope that Daniel has a trouble-free race for a change. He does seem to engender other dramas going on around him, a bit like Valtteri Bottas, who had a big moment today when he didn't know that Oscar Piastri was closing on him very quickly going into turn one and just came into his apex and they touched and they both got away with it, no problem at all. But that was for sure, the stewards are going to be looking at that one, and that was just a clear example of the mirrors on a Formula One car at the moment are nothing like good enough. And in this occasion, obviously Valtteri didn't get the message in time from the pit wall. I guess with GPS being as impressive as it is and useful as it is, the drivers tend to rely more on radio messages about traffic behind them or quickly approaching cars than they ever have before. But that, of course, means that they're not looking in the mirrors as much. And that's something that needs to be looked into for sure. And so we go into the sprint tomorrow with Max and Charles on the front row. Max on the pole, very close in top speed. And behind them, Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, and then Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari alongside Oscar Piastri in the first of the two McLaren-Mercedes. Should be good fun, and then they'll be qualifying for the Grand Prix. A big thanks to Jetcraft, Pitbox and OEM Exclusive. Take care. See you tomorrow.